Thank you, Craig, for those kind words, especially the part about being a young mother. To say I'm honored to be here tonight to receive this award is truly an understatement. I'm also quite humbled. On most days, to be quite frank, I feel like I am falling short, like I'm letting down my daughter and my son and my husband and my dog. When Diana called to ask if I would accept this award, I was stunned silent, and I am not someone who's usually at a loss for words, like anyone who spoke with me at the cocktail hour is probably already aware. I think my reply was something quite eloquent like, huh, me? And I started to cry, because I do that a lot too. Ironically, I'm often told things like, wow, you are amazing, I couldn't do what you do, or you are the strongest person I know. I think what they really mean is, I am glad it's you and not me, because I couldn't handle it. But I'm not doing anything more and probably a lot less than any other mother in my situation. And I'm certainly not the one who's the inspiration. That credit belongs to my little peanut, Abigail Henrietta. Abigail and her twin brother, Asher, were born when I was only 25 weeks and 2 days pregnant. Asher was born first, weighing 1 pound and 14 ounces. 3 minutes later, his little sister, Abigail, was born, and she weighed all of 1 pound and 3 ounces. Just more than 4 sticks of butter. She was so small, and I think about that every time I bake. Dr. Ali held her in the palm of his hand, and he showed her to me before rushing her off to the NICU to join her brother. It was the longest 12 hours of my life waiting for someone to tell me what was going on. It was after 3 in the morning when the NICU resident finally came to my room. Your daughter, she said, she kicked me. Your 1 pound daughter kicked me. She's going to be just fine. If you ever wondered if personality is formed or hardwired, I assure you it is sewn into the deepest parts of our DNA, as this child of mine was born with more stubbornness, strength, and attitude than any one person has the right to embody. And it is this stubbornness, strength, and positive attitude that has enabled her to weather all the storms, all the trials and tribulations, all the setbacks, hospital stays, and surgeries, and come out smiling. On Abigail's second day of life, she suffered a pulmonary embolism, which led to an infant ventricular hemorrhage, and we knew it was bad. That's about all we knew for a very long time. On the evening of the twins' 80th day of life, we were told that the radiologist felt Abigail's head was growing too large and recommended that we transfer her to Children's National Medical Center for a pediatric MRI to see if she did have hydrocephalus. I couldn't process this new word because there were so many logistics flying around, leaving Asher, transferring Abigail, 2 babies, 2 hospitals. My husband, Matt, and I watched as they inserted Abigail into what looked to us like a large test tube that they put in the back of the ambulance. When they got to Children's, they settled her into her new room, and in the early morning hours, she had her MRI, and then we waited. The next morning, Dr. Tan Chang came to see us, and this brilliant pediatric neurologist tried her best to explain to us what she saw on the MRI. She showed us the enlarged ventricles in Abigail's brain. She showed us the pictures. She said the word hydrocephalus again, and she talked about treatment involving brain surgery and placement of something called a shunt. She was then joined by Dr. Robert Keating, director of neurosurgery, and he started by recommending that we not Google search the condition, and he promised to return later that day when he was out of surgery. And then we were left alone in a cold room with our baby daughter, hooked up to 1 million monitors, and this new word just looming in the air. And we knew that this condition that Abigail now had was serious, and we knew it could involve brain surgery, and we knew very little else. 2 weeks later, on her 95th day of life, Abigail underwent placement of her first shunt. And Dr. Keating said the surgery went smoothly, and when we saw her, I remember thinking, okay, this isn't so bad. She looks peaceful, she looks good. But the hydrocephalus journey was not over. It had barely just begun. 5 months later, Abigail suffered a shunt malfunction. A month after that, her shunt became infected and had to be externalized for many weeks while the infection was treated. When she came home 3 weeks later, she was no longer able to roll over. 20 months later, Abigail's shunt again became blocked. The surgery failed to treat the issue, and 24 hours later, she was rushed back into another emergency brain surgery. 3 days after that, her condition became more complicated, and she had to have another surgery. 2 weeks later, she had another revision again. And then we had 26 months of checkups, just checkups, and it was like bliss. But then last summer, Abigail got sick, and tests came back normal, and so we all just thought stomach bug. But she didn't improve. More doctor's appointments, and then she was diagnosed with pneumonia. But she got worse. I was not prepared for the diagnosis that came down. I don't think anyone was. Shunt infection. I fell apart. I mean, how? How after 26 months after her last surgery was this an infection? Well, we got our answer directly from a photo taken in the OR. Abigail had a scab of sorts that never went away, and I had pointed it out to many doctors over the years, and everyone just thought it was sutures that had never dissolved. But it turned out there was no skin under the scab, and with the passing of time, the plastic valve had pushed up the scab just enough to allow bacteria in. So the shunt had to be removed and externalized for several weeks. Well, when a shunt is externalized, it is gravity that's used to draw out the excess cerebrospinal fluid from tubes that are sticking out of the brain, and they're secured with tape to your head. This means you can literally not move your position. It was one thing telling that with an infant, but you try telling a 4.5-year-old she cannot move. So Matt and I did 24-hour shifts in the hospital, so Abigail was never alone, and so that one of us was always with Asher. Well, Abigail's tubing fell out one day, and she had to go back into the OR to have it replaced. When she finally had her new shunt placed a week or so later, we were relieved, but still not done, because 4 days after we were discharged, I found myself running red lights in a race to get Abigail back to Children's, where Dr. Keating performed a complicated operation to place a second catheter in the back of her head where the new shunt resided. I was terrified it wouldn't work and that a second shunt system would have to be placed, as if one regularly failing shunt system was not going to be enough. But luckily, the second shunt was not needed, just a second catheter. Okay, pop quiz, who kept up with me? Who kept count? That was 12 hydrocephalus-related brain surgeries in 4.5 years. 12. I could repeat that in my sleep. And it's a story I've shared countless times, and it's a story that I have heard countless times in some fashion. I think the reason that hydro parents and those living with hydrocephalus are so quick to share ER, hospital, and surgical stories is because that is where our commonality rests. We can relate to the stories, and hearing about others' trials and tribulations with failed shunts and closed ETVs makes us feel connected. I can see some of you nodding your heads right now because you can relate to this. But the truth is, to me, hydrocephalus is a very lonely condition because the commonality ends in the OR. It impacts each of us differently, from physical, educational, social, and psychological challenges that can accompany it. Abigail's last hydrocephalus-related surgery was just over a year ago. 25% of shunts fail in kids in the first year, so this is a big milestone for us. But 20% fail in the second year. So we have another year to go before we can exhale a little bit more. But there is never a complete release of anxiety or stress when living with hydrocephalus. And to know that the only treatment involves brain surgery, this is no way to live. Abigail deserves better than this. Everyone with hydrocephalus deserves better than this. And this is my vision. And it's simply not in my DNA to not fight with every fiber of my being to help make it a reality. So on behalf of the 1 million families in the United States affected by hydrocephalus, I would like to thank Craig and Vicki Brown and the Hydrocephalus Association for support and for dedication to pursue a cure. I also want to extend a sincere thank you to all of you that have joined this journey to support families like mine by investing in the PHH campaign. Thank you for fighting with me. Thank you for giving my little peanut hope. Here's to no more BS.
Music go.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your dinner.